Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing my wrap up for February and my What's Up for March, where I talk about what I read in February and what I'm going to be reading in March. February was a month, and I'm very glad that it's over. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe I'll extrapolate a bit. Yeah, I've just been having a bit of stressful times, but then there's also been some really good stuff. Like I finished my horror novella last month, and I sent it to my one friend to beta read it, and she loved it, and that was like the best thing ever. My husband's currently beta reading it right now, and so when that's done, I'm going to send it to my editor. So I'm very excited. It's a haunted house story about a couple that buys a house they can barely afford, and they get stuck there because they can't move, and there's a ghost, and it's kind of like The Conjuring meets Peter Klein's what was it, 14. It's kind of like that. Like there's a big mystery in it. I really love when ghost horror movies have like a reason behind the haunting, like a really cool mystery, and that's kind of what I really focused on in this. And the couple is really very relatable and very fun, and there's some funny moments too. I had a lot of fun writing it. I'm so excited that it's like kind of getting there. Anyway, I read 8 books this month, which is closer to my usual amount I normally read. I'm going to go through them ranked. So the first book on the list is Cross of Empire. I just released that review last week, and this book is so boring. It's really boring. It's very dull. Definitely not a great example of a classic sci-fi for sure. Then we have the Spirit Collection of Thorn Hall. This was one of the books, while I enjoyed reading it at the time, I had a lot of questions at the end. I thought the insta-love was it was too much for me, and I didn't understand kind of like the world building in the sense of how the ghosts functioned. Yeah, there was like, it was a very fun book though. I did enjoy it. Same with the Sirens. It's kind of on the same kind of page. Magical realism about sisterhood and women and things like that, stuff that I'm interested in. I had questions again at the end of the book where I was just like, but what about this? And I guess it just didn't hold up to like Wayward Standards, which is the other book by the same author. Death of the Author. So we're doing the live show next week, probably hosted by Steph at Copy Over Apples. At the moment, I'm not finished it yet. I have about 10 chapters left. I am not super into it, which is why it's sitting here. I may or may not do a dedicated review for it. I'm not sure. It depends. I think maybe we'll do the live show first, see how everyone else thinks. I just find it like really, really boring and kind of like self-indulgent. Anyway, I think some of the other people in the book club really like it, so it might be a debate about this book. Cosmic Widow. This was the third in the Agent Renault Spy-Fi series. This is really fun. It's art heist, or like, someone taking down an art heist. It's really good. On Impulse, I reviewed that the other day, and this is one of the SPSFC 4 books. It is also a mystery, but it's a former police officer. Her friend is murdered, and so she's on the case to try to figure out why, but she's also kind of on the run from the real cops. It's really good. It has a lot of cool sci-fi kind of tech in it. It's good. Great character too. She's really fun. Blackwood's Blue Sky. This is another magical realism February, about this woman who, she's a young single mother, and she meets this man who's very strange, and she decides to go live with him in like his isolated cabin in the Alaskan wilderness. And so it's part kind of like wilderness survival, living off grid novel, and literary fiction and contemporary fiction, but also has like this magical realism hint. The reason I'm ranking this one higher is because the magical realism, I didn't really have a question about it. It was handled in a way that made sense to me, and that it didn't raise too many questions. And then we have Beartooth, which was absolutely fantastic. Totally a 5-star read. I loved it. I thought it was so good. It's about these 2 brothers also living off-grid in the wilderness, this time in Montana, I believe. And it's just kind of about hitting rock bottom and getting back up, and it's just so lyrically written. It reminded me a lot of kind of like Cormac McCarthy or like Hemingway, kind of like a pared down version, but with actual women in the stories. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then we have my favorite book of the month, which was Idle Fire by Grace Curtis. This is a fantasy novel. It's a quest narrative. It kind of takes place in like inspired by the fall of Rome sort of thing, but it's like just these 2 women from different parts of the world who have different quests, but the quest is taking them to the same place, so they team up. There's a bit of a slow burn romance. There's another character that's just like chaotic and entertaining, and it's just, the characterization is fantastic. Everything about this book was just really, really well done, and it just like knocked it out of the park for me, and so I really, really had no question that this was my favorite book of the month. Um, it's funny, I was actually going to review it like next week, but I swapped it out because I'm expecting a bunch of 5 stars next month. So I was like, let's make my life slightly easier and just review Idle Fire earlier so I can put it as my favorite book for February, because I don't want to have to like compare it to other books, because I have a feeling I've got some good ones coming up. So, what am I doing next month? Well, I have some SPSFC 4 book reviews that I have to start posting because I have to finish reading them before March 7th. So I'm going to have a couple of those reviews and then a couple more kind of in March. So some of these are Far Flung, which is a cozy sci-fi fantasy about these 3 kind of furry characters. It's really cute. I enjoyed it. I'll be reviewing that next week. And then The Artificial Structure, formerly known as The Moon. Yes, that title is wild. I love the title. This is a kind of haves versus have-not / AI dystopian future story. It's really interesting. Then we have The Art of Subtle Visions, and this is where I don't remember what books are about because I requested them on NetGalley a long time ago. So this is a NetGalley request. I have no idea what this is. Then there's Blood on Her Tongue. I have really high hopes for this one. This is by Joanna Van Veen, who did My Darling Dreadful Thing, and it's another kind of historical fiction horror about sisters, and I'm very excited about that. There's Tideborn. This is a fantasy. I can't tell you anything else about it because I don't remember. I remember requesting this one like on a whim because the cover was pretty. Then Direct Descendant, which I'm really excited about. This is by Tanya Huff, who's one of my favorite authors of like military sci-fi, and so this is like a cozy horror book and like romance almost, and I'm like so excited for this. I am so excited for this. This sounds so much fun. Yeah, it's like, I think it says something like cozy eldritch horror. I'm like, oh my god. And then we have Space Brooms. Look at that cover. That cover is amazing. This is kind of like a space opera about a guy. I believe he's like a janitor, and he gets wrapped up in some kind of a thing, some kind of a heist. I think something like that. Lots of heists this year. And then The Long Home of the Soul is another SPSFC book that I'm going to review. This one is a classic kind of noir detective story, but it's set in the future, and a very dystopian future. It seems very kind of politically leaning. It seems very politically leaning, and preferably in a way that I enjoy. So yeah. Oh yeah. Also, so the Interstellar Book Club. I forgot to mention last month the one I'm doing. So this month I made sure not to forget. We're doing Worlds of Exile and Illusion by Ursula Le Guin. I'm probably gonna do this one on audiobook. I don't know what it's about. I actually didn't vote for it, but I'm excited to read it because I don't know if I'm gonna get to a classic sci-fi this month. So this is kind of a classic sci-fi. I think it came out in the 90s, or maybe it was the 80s. Anyway. We'll be doing that. And then Steph from Coffee Over Apples also has another book club. Can't remember what it's called, but they're reading On Tyranny. So I'm going to probably try and get to that one too. We'll see. I don't know. This is a lot. Especially if especially if my husband finally finishes reading my book and I have to go back and like do edits on it. So we'll see. I'm hopeful though. March is a bit of a longer month too. So, and hopefully some spring. So anyway, thanks for watching.